Quick, get in! Okay, this video is about the Rhino, primarily for the Adeptus Sororitas, of course, as you can see here. But, you know, we're kind of talking about rhinos in general, because there is very little difference between them now. Basically, the difference is that this has a 6-up invulnerable save, and can technically deny the witch, but that will never happen if you look at the actual rules. So, Rhino transports, are they any good in 8th edition? The basic answer is yes. The long answer is kind of. It really depends on what you want them for. So let's look at what the Rhino actually is. So, as always, it is a transport with a capacity of 10, which means you can fit 10 infantry models in. Hooray! Okay, the other good thing about the Rhino is that it comes with a Stormbolter on top, and it only costs 75 points. It has a 3-up armor save, it is toughness 7, it has 10 wounds, which is a little bit on the low side, but it does have a rule where every turn on a 6-up, it regains a lost wound. Will that actually happen? Possibly once per game. Having said that, it will, if it's actually targeted by anything, it will probably be dead long before it gets the benefits of that. So, meh. The main defensive capability it has is the fact that it has smoke launchers, which means instead of shooting, it can make all incoming shots have a -1 to hit, which is fantastic if your opponent's relying on the overcharged plasma, because they might kill themselves. Makes sense. And generally it's just fine if you're expecting this thing to get shot. I often find that when I use the smoke launchers it doesn't get shot at, and that's primarily because I have used the smoke launchers, so it actually works better than you'd think in increasing its defenses, because people are like, I don't want to waste my full ballistic skill shots on this thing because it's going to have a -1 to hit, so instead I'm going to ignore it for that entire turn and go for something else with my weapons, and that is a big bonus, because that means your Rhino's going to be completely untouched, which means whoever's inside can get where the hell they need to be. Now for upgrades, you can take a Hunter-Killer missile, don't bother, it's pants, or you can take an extra Stormbolter, which is a good way to spend an extra 2 points, because Stormbolters are fantastic. Okay, so the Rhino is strength 6 if you ever get into combat, it's weapon skill 6 up, and it starts with 3 attacks, but of course it's got the degrading stat line. Its movement speed is 12 inches, which is not terrible by a long shot, but of course it drops to half that, and then half that again by the time it gets to 1 to 2 wounds remaining. Of course by that point it's probably done its job, or it's died for the rest of the round anyway. Okay, its ballistic skill is 3 up, which is pretty good with 2 Stormbolters. You could do a lot worse than that. And that's essentially it. So here's the good thing about this, okay? This thing can transport Adeptus Ministorum infantry, okay, so not just Sororitas. So that means if you have anything like priests, you have any crusaders, difficult assassins, or anything like that, they can go in the Rhino. And basically if you're having an assault squad that is fairly slow, say Repentia, that kind of thing, and you know, you don't want it to get shot, Rhino is fantastic for them. And to be honest, this is what the Rhino is for now. Ironically, Sisters went so long without an assault transport, and then it ended up being the Rhino, which is now the best choice for this. Anything that doesn't have a shooting attack, anything that benefits from being in a large squad when it attacks, in other words, all our close combat units, that's what you put in a Rhino, okay? As for other squads, troops, that kind of thing, you can put them in Rhinos, but if you're doing that, generally speaking, you want the multiple small units that are cheap, probably with just Stormbolters, that kind of thing. You could have 2 squads of 5 in here, and they can hop out on objectives as this thing just drives along the board, blah 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 blah. Okay, and they grab the objectives, the Rhino carries on, maybe grabs an objective on its own at the end. If it never kills anything, that's fine, don't expect it to. If it does kill stuff, it's a bonus. With 2 Stormbolters on there for 77 points, it can lend a decent amount of firepower to another squad that's shooting with anti-infantry weapons, so worth doing. Odds are it'll be around mid-table or up front anyway by that point. And that's basically it for putting things in there. So if you have squads of Dominions or anything like that, you're better off with an emulator. I've tried the heavy flamer retributors in this because I was on a budget and I couldn't put them in a repressor, and honestly they barely did anything. The Rhino got them into position, but by the time they actually fired, it was already a bit too late. The rest of my army had already swept past that point and they struggled to keep up. So because of that, the Rhino is definitely better for midfield units or things that are designed to hold, such as, of course, like I said, small squads of troops that can just hop on objectives that won't be protected, but they don't need to be because they're cheap. They just need to get on an objective and hold it. That's what the Rhino excels at. Or of course, again, the big combat squads where you just drive this fucker right up the field, advancing every turn. Don't forget to pop smoke if you think it's going to get attacked, but if you've got a couple of these, that helps. But yeah, you just drive forward, unload on the second turn and get in for that charge. That makes a big difference. So, how do you keep a Rhino alive is, cover's a lot harder to get these days. You can do it. Best thing you can do with this is, it's not a big model by any means. Depending on your terrain, it might be quite easy to hide it completely out of line of sight when you set it up. And if you can, you should definitely do that. But bear in mind, if there is an assault unit in here, you'll definitely want this thing near the middle of the table if you can, because it needs to get as far as possible towards the enemy units that you want to assault. Unless, of course, they've already placed those units and you know exactly where they are, then you obviously can deploy it as close as possible, whatever's more convenient. But yeah, if you can hide it, try it. If there is any cover which covers this enough to give it a cover save, try it, but don't block your passage, because basically the thing, if people want this dead, it's going to die. Okay? The real trick to keeping a Rhino alive is to have enough other things in your army that a Rhino is so far down their target priority list that it's just going to get ignored for the most part. Because who's going to care about an annoying little Rhino when this, the squad inside it's already out and like chopping their face, and you've got Celestine in their face, and you've got heavy bolter retributors in the backfield just pouring dice at them, and you've got assault squads across the board. You've got Penitent engines charging in next turn unless they suddenly stop them. No one's going to care about the Rhino, especially if it's just piddling around a little squads of Battle Sisters. Like, who's going to care about that, And if they do focus on dealing with the objectives, again, the Rhino is not the thing they'll be going for, it's the squads inside. So they may divert some firepower to this, but that's why I use those smoke launchers again, because it's going to dissuade them from doing that. So the other benefit of the Rhino, other than the fact that it's fairly fast and can get objectives that troops can't, that kind of thing, but another advantage is once it has delivered its payload, if that unit gets particularly damaged or hurt, there is nothing stopping you jumping back in this Rhino and getting them to safety, or getting them to a new location where they can grab an objective. And again, score more points, maybe get line breaker, that kind of thing. There's nothing stopping you doing that. The other benefit is, if you are inside a Rhino with a unit that is severely damaged, say I, for some reason, have my heavy flamer retributors and down to one girl left with the heavy flamer. Okay, if I hide her inside the Rhino, there is nothing stopping me using my active faith while they are still in that Rhino. Okay, to heal another one. Here we go, one back again. Maybe the next turn I decide to heal another one, not a heavy flamer because I ain't got it out, but there you go. And before you know it, you're back up to full strength. By the end of the game, pop out again, shoot something. Now you don't want to leave them in there too long, but it's a good way to keep them safe and just gradually build up their strength again for another hit. Where this works particularly well is things if you have like melted dominions, or any kind of expensive weapons that have gone. That's a fantastic way of using them. So consider that. Okay, the other good thing about a Rhino is with its transport capacity of 10, You can do a lot of cool things with these during setup and deployment, because obviously if you deploy all your units first, that's a good thing, because it gives you that +1 on the on the roll off to decide who goes first. Now, why this is good, I mean, it's not as good as it used to be, because it always meant you were going first, apart from CC Initiative, but even if you want to go second, it's still worth going for that +1, because it's +1 to decide whether you want to go first. So you can always choose to go second, and then you don't get seized again, so you know it's a known commodity, so that's good. But most of the time you will want to go first, especially with sisters, because we've got quite an Alpha Strike style army these days, which is ironic. Rhinos can really help you out with that, especially if you don't have a full-size squad. So, for instance, the last time I used the Rhino, I had the Heavy Flamer Retributors in here, and I had a squad of 7, because I needed to have to get out and take some losses, that kind of thing. So it's 7 for some ablative wounds. Okay, that meant I had 3 spaces left, which meant I could put my Priest in here, and a Canoness or anything else I wanted, as an independent character, or even another small squad of like 3, say you've got 3 Arco-Flagellants or something like that. There is nothing stopping you putting that in here, turn 1, and then just getting him out right at the start of the turn, like pop the Priest out, for instance. He can go with the unit he needs to, and there you go, and it's less drops because you drop the entire thing as 1. So instead of having 3 separate drops, or 4 if I still had the Rhino, you have 1, which really, really helps. And if you know already what your opponent has in terms of his unit number, and whether he has transports in this way, or whether he's already placed them, that kind of thing, you can basically tailor the amount of drops, so you don't need to start them all in here. You just need less drops than your opponent. Okay? And if you give it a little bit of time and thought, you can seriously easily manipulate it so you get that +1 on the roll, which is a nice thing to have. So again, it's just a little bit of flexibility the Rhino gets you, and it's a cheap, cheerful transport, and to be honest, it does a very good job for what it is. So I do recommend the Rhinos. I think though, for the most part, transports are way less valuable than they used to be, because we are a lot faster than we used to be. Consider what kind of units you have. I've already recommended the units I would take in a Rhino. If you have a different kind of unit, I would say you probably don't want a Rhino. Dominion squads are an interesting one, and I should just give them a brief mention, is that you could take 2 Dominion squads in a single Rhino. The problem with this is you are putting all your eggs in one basket, and even if you move that turn 1, you could have the Vanguard move, and move again and get out, which is good. You've got 2 Dominion squads that can peel off, deal 2 different threats. Of course, if your opponent knows you're going to do that, then he'll probably separate the best targets for Dominions to other corners of the board, so you can't just pop out and kill them both. Maybe it's something really big like a Titan or something, then you can go all of them into 1. That's fantastic, but that's rare. You're not going to see that much in 8th edition. Except in massive point games, and yeah, maybe that could work. I would probably limit it to high point games, that kind of thing, because it's quite expensive. But again, a repressor works way better for single squads if you're going to do it that way. But if you put 2 in 1 transport, that's not a terrible idea. Just bear in mind it's going to be quite dangerous, especially if you're going second. That's when things get really scary. Now, one of the original suggestions for Rhinos and transports and things that Games Workshop themselves gave was if you are assaulting with a combat unit, you can get them out, and then you can charge with the Rhino to take Overwatch, and then charge with the assault unit. That is a perfectly decent tactic and legitimate enough. Bear in mind though, if you commit it to the assault, make sure your assault unit is definitely going to get in, otherwise the Rhino is completely on its own and won't do anything. Also bear in mind that you have enough in the assault unit to kill that unit, unless you don't need this Rhino anywhere else. Because if you can kill that unit, it frees up the Rhino on the next turn, which means it's then free again to pick up other units and just move around, that kind of thing, be useful. Because if you commit it to an assault like that, yes, you're soaking up an Overwatch, but you are effectively writing off this unit for the rest of that turn, and probably a few turns afterwards, unless, again, you have something that can wipe that squad in a single turn. Which, personally, I like to build units like that, but it honestly depends on what you have. So, something to consider, is it worth committing the flexibility of the Rhino, which can get you points and that kind of thing, into an assault just to deny a single Overwatch? Consider it. Remember, it's a tool in your arsenal. But that's basically it about the Rhino. It's always been a solid choice. It's still a solid choice. Again, it's a little bit more limited in its scope these days, but still an effective unit. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, remember to click that like button. Don't forget to comment below with your own thoughts. Any ideas you have, share them below, of course. And of course, subscribe for more videos in the future. Alright, thanks for watching. See you next time.